Trump's decision to fire inspector generals, all 18 firings, without providing any rationale, would put any new inspector general in a position to worry about the job security of the undertaking. Can you tell me what you think about the firing of all these inspector generals at one time by President Trump?
Folks, you are not going to believe the absolute garbage coming out of Washington, D.C. now. We've got Senator Dick Durbin, one of the most partisan figures on Capitol Hill, trying to play gotcha with a Trump nominee during a confirmation hearing. He thinks he's so clever, bringing up old tales and political attacks, but what he actually did was destroy the left's hypocrisy and their complete disinterest in actual governance. Before we dive into this absolute circus, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let's get the truth out there. You won't want to miss how our guy handled Durbin's desperate theatrics.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to the nominees. Dr. Brashear, I spent most of my career in Congress trying to get a single food safety inspection agency and explain the alphabet soup that we currently have. I wish you good luck in the next year that I'm here. I'll help you if I can. There's another topic that you've been engaged in that is near and dear to my heart, and that is known as the line speed rule. When I was working my way through college, I spent 4 months working in a slaughterhouse in East St. Louis, Illinois, Hunter Packing Company, now later John Morrell. And I learned what it was to work the line on the kill and the cut. I'm sure you know the difference. And the kill,
Yes,
of course, is when that hog meets its fate and ultimately ends up in a chilled room to be carved up the next day. We had a union contract, and the union contract said that we were expected to process on the kill 225 hogs an hour. That was a pretty busy day, 1,800 hogs at the end of the day. I worked on that line, and I learned a lot. It was hot. It was loud. There were 240-pound hogs rushing through there, one every 15 seconds, and it was dangerous as hell. People I worked with collapsed on the job. Some were mauled by the machinery, and a lot of them were hurt. Some of the sharpest knives I've ever seen in my life were used by these men and women as part of their daily work, and they had the scars to show for it. So your experience in this issue is one I want to explore for a minute. It sounds to me like the decision's been made by the Trump administration to ignore the court ruling and to move forward with line speeds which are unimaginable. What about the safety of the workers? Has that been taken into consideration?
Thank you so much, and thank you for putting context with your question, Senator. I really appreciate it. I am committed to moving forward with the modernization and listening to the results of the study, and if confirmed, we will move forward with the modernized inspection system. However, we are the agency is very committed to worker safety and providing safe working conditions, not only for the workers in the plant, as well as for our inspectors. In the report and in the response from USDA, you can see from the publicly available information, the industry is urged to look at the results of that report because, as you mentioned, the jobs can be difficult and demanding. And it urges the industry to look at the report and to develop best practices that can be followed by the industry, including knife sharpening, providing medical care, encouraging workers to take time off, and also maintaining our relationship with OSHA will be very important.
Let me ask you a specific question. In March of this year, U.S. Department of Agriculture Secretary Rollins announced that FSIS will extend waivers allowing pork and poultry facilities to maintain higher line speeds, and USDA will no longer require plants to submit redundant worker safety data, citing 2 recent studies they commissioned about line speeds and worker safety. Are you backing off? Is the department backing off this issue of safety?
As you know, OSHA oversees worker safety and FSIS will oversee the food safety of the product.
But in terms of the safety in the plant and the speed of the line, that was a decision you worked on in the Department of Agriculture.
I was not involved in that decision. I haven't been in the agency or been at the table for that decision-making.
Thank you very much. Mr. Walk, it's unfair to think that we can ask any hard questions with your cheering section behind you. Your lovely daughters and your family.
Thank you,
But I am
Senator.
going to ask you this question. President Trump's decision to fire inspector generals, all 18 firings, without providing any rationale, would put any new inspector general in a position to worry about the job security of the undertaking. Can you tell me what you think about the firing of all these inspector generals at one time by President Trump?
Senator, I would say that the IG Act authorizes the president to remove inspector generals at will.
But of course, there was a requirement in the law of notifying Congress in advance and the reason for the firing, and that wasn't complied with. Does that concern you?
Senator, I would say that that issue, in fact, the entire issue, that our previous IG is a named plaintiff in a case specifically against USDA. So I can't opine on that particular issue because it is an issue that was in the case or is in the case.
I'll make one last point. On January 25th, I joined Chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Chuck Grassley, in sending a letter notifying President Trump that he did not provide the rationale for Congress and thus had not followed the law in the firings of these inspector generals. That was in January. We have not received any response, satisfactory response from President Trump on those firings. I would say if we're going to have a law, the president should be required to follow it. Thank you.
All right, patriots, let's get straight into it. We're looking at a clip from a Senate hearing, and Senator Dick Durbin, the Illinois Democrat, is trying his absolute best to trip up a Trump nominee. That Durbin starts off with this whole song and dance about food safety in a single agency, which honestly sounds like big government overreach to me. We don't need more bureaucracy, we need efficiency and accountability, but that's a whole other video. What really grinds my gears is when Durbin pivots to this line speed rule and brings up his personal experience in a slaughterhouse from decades ago. Look, I respect anyone who's worked a hard day in their life, but what does his old job have to do with modern food processing regulations, especially when he's trying to attack the Trump administration? He's trying to imply that the Trump administration, by allowing higher line speeds, somehow disregarded worker safety. This is a classic liberal tactic. Invent a problem, connect it to something emotional like worker safety, and then blame conservatives. But here's the kicker. The nominee, our guy, stands firm. He correctly points out that OSHA, not the USDA's food safety branch, is responsible for worker safety. The USDA's FSIs is about food safety, which is a critical distinction Durbin conveniently ignores. He wants to muddy the waters, making it seem like the Trump administration was sacrificing workers for profits. That's a flat-out lie. American businesses, under a strong conservative economy, create jobs and innovate safely. We don't need government bureaucrats micromanaging every single detail. We need clear lines of responsibility. The nominee's commitment to modernization and supporting industry best practices is exactly what we need: less government, more common sense. Durbin then goes back to the waivers for higher line speeds and tries to frame it as the USDA reducing its focus on safety. Again, this is pure spin. What the Trump administration did was cut through unnecessary red tape, allowing businesses to operate more efficiently while still maintaining rigorous safety standards. The left always thinks more rules equal more safety, but often it just means more bureaucracy and less productivity. We trust American businesses and American workers to do the right thing, especially when the government isn't constantly breathing down their necks. But here's where Durbin really shows his true colors and destroys the real political agenda. He brings up President Trump's decision to fire several inspector generals. He asks the nominee, "Does that concern you?" Durbin tries to make it sound like some grand act of tyranny. Let me tell you something. Inspector generals serve at the pleasure of the president. They are executive branch employees. If a president, any president, feels that an IG is not performing their duties effectively or is actively working against the administration's agenda, they have every right to replace them. This isn't some attack on oversight. It's a president exercising his constitutional authority to ensure his administration is effective and accountable to him, and by extension, to the American people who elected him. The nominee handled this perfectly. He respectfully declined to comment on a pending case and didn't take the bait. He didn't allow Durbin to drag him into a partisan food fight about past events. He stayed focused on his role, his mission, and the job he's there to do for the American people. This is the kind of principled stand we need from our public servants. So, what did we learn from this clip? We learned that Senator Dick Durbin and his ilk on the left are more interested in political grandstanding and trying to score cheap points than in actually addressing the challenges facing our nation. They twist facts, they misrepresent intentions, and they try to trap good people. But we also saw a strong, principled nominee who wouldn't be bullied, who understood the facts, and who stood up for what's right. That, patriots, is the kind of leadership we need more of. Don't let them trick you with their emotional appeals and their misdirection. Always look at the facts, understand the context, and remember what they're truly trying to achieve.